I was the administrator at Patrick Henry Hospital, which was located on the site where Warwick Forest is today. And I had just started there. I was 24 years old, and it was the 385-bed long-term care facility. And we were, I guess, as I was looking at it, my background originally had been in acute care. I'd come from Riverside Hospital, where I was in the process of finishing up my residency. And as we were kind of looking for a way to get Patrick Henry, I guess, moving, I became aware of a lot of federal funding that had become available starting in the early 60s when Medicare and Medicaid came about. There were a number of provisions that impacted services for older Americans. And we had the notion, as we were looking around, that an expanded mission might be in order for Patrick Henry. At the time, all they did was pretty much inpatient long-term care. And I became intrigued with the idea of a geriatric daycare center. There weren't any such things at the time. And one of the volunteers who worked with me very closely out there is a fellow named Waldo Harrison, and the two of us kept getting together and kicking around the idea, and we decided that we wanted to start one. But in order to do it, we pieced together grants from a variety of other programs. There was, I think it was Title VII, which was a nutrition program, but it provided funding for congregate feeding for older adults. And we made application for that grant and received it. At the same time, or shortly thereafter, we applied for, I think it was Title XX, which was a grant for transportation program, because in order to kind of piece together this geriatric daycare center, we needed sort of four things. We needed a facility, which we had. We had a number of vacant buildings out there. It was an old abandoned military base. And we had rehabbed that building, and we needed meals. We needed some social services and activities, and we needed a way to get the residents there, or the clients there. So the transportation was secured through this Title XX grant. And then we secured some additional funding to provide some social services and effectively created a geriatric adult daycare center, which at the time was one of the first in the country and was the first one in Virginia. This, I think, was in 1973. And about the same time, the state was contemplating creating a state agency to oversee these various programs for the aging, and they had indicated an interest in doing an agency on aging. So we made application to become the first agency on aging, and actually Patrick Henry Hospital was the initial, wrote the grant, and we put together the grant to do that. Interestingly enough, as we were kind of activating this whole program, we hired a lady who later became the director of the whole program for the state, Betty Reams, and she was from York County, and she was our first director there. As those programs expanded, she became oversaw the program for the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, which was pretty neat. So that's how we got started.
So I heard you say something very interesting that I think would be a really good sound clip. It was that PAA was the first of its kind in the state. I don't know if you mind saying that over and just like a really kind of concise.
Well, you know, I'll try to think of the best way to put it, because it sort of morphed into that. We were just, I guess you'd say, following the trends, but the Peninsula Agency on Aging was when they first announced their interest in having these agencies. We were already de facto that way, because we were receiving grant monies from a variety of the various programs they were going to consolidate. So we made application, and because we were already doing it, it was very easy for them to get us. And so Peninsula Agency on Aging, I think, was the first in the state, and one of the first in the country, as was the adult daycare center.
Okay.
Yeah, her second question is, tell us how you were involved with the agency's inception, but I'm pretty sure we just answered that. Right, that was kind of included in that part.
It was.
Okay, so why did Riverside decide to invest resources in PAA?
Well, the evolution of Riverside's involvement in the Peninsula Agency on Aging was a result of the creation of the Riverside Health System. When I was at Patrick Henry Hospital, it was a separate nonprofit organization and wasn't related to Riverside at all. Riverside Hospital was a nonprofit acute general hospital that was located in Newport News. And over a period of about 10 years between 1972 and 1982, which started initially when I was at Patrick Henry, and then when I moved back to Riverside, we ultimately ended up creating the Riverside Health System by merging Riverside Hospital and Patrick Henry Hospital to create the healthcare system. And as a result, the mission of Riverside is always, of the new Riverside, if you will, was always a little bit unique in that it incorporated the traditional acute care mission, but also on an equal footing was a commitment to a mission which had been started by Patrick Henry Hospital, which was services for older adults. We crafted a variety of ways for the two organizations to work together, so as we merged the companies, Patrick Henry's having served as the original grantee for the Agency on Aging, we incorporated that. At some point early on, we spun off the Agency on Aging into a separate corporation, but Patrick Henry remained as a principal part of that. And as I recall, we two members of the board of directors were appointed by Patrick Henry and later by Riverside, and I think that continues to this day, although I'm not sure.
What has since the agency's inception? I don't think that is worded correctly.
It wasn't. I noticed. I did see that.
She has, what has since the agency's inception, i.e. trends in older adult care, economy, population growth, resources?
Probably what has evolved,
Yeah.
and quite a bit.
So where has the agency gone, I guess, since it kind of...
Well, I think they would have more specific details on the agency itself, but in general, a lot has happened, because in 1972, and I think it's part of the motivation that got me really interested in getting those services going, is that in the early 70s, pretty much all you saw for long-term care services was inpatient long-term care. And it was poorly funded, and I guess for a lack of a better way of putting it, it was almost like warehousing people, and I thought it was pretty awful. And so a lot of the motivation that we had in trying to come up with a more expansive mission, which was then absorbed into and expanded by Riverside, was to kind of do a lot of the same things for long-term care, as it was then called, as we were seeing had already happened in acute care, i.e. Adopt a mission that was much more in the community-based. And so we have been kind of ahead of the curve. We did a life care at home insurance policy 25 years ago, where we were trying to provide a way to maintain people in their residence. And so these are the types of things that have evolved, and today you're starting to really see some of these programs take off. I have to admit, from a personal standpoint, I would have been surprised that it would have taken as long as it did, because we were kind of envisioning these sorts of things 40 years ago. But it's just taken a long time, I think, for folks to realize the importance of that, and the funding and so forth. But I would say it's come an awfully long way.
Right. Well, I mean, unless you think there's any other.
Can you say happy birthday, PAA?
Well, happy birthday, PAA.
I got everyone to say that. I was gonna put it together at the end.
Okay,
if there's
yeah,
time
that's
or whatever.
nice.
We'll see if it works. I feel like that if there was a sound like a concise clip just to get back. I mean, I guess can you really confirm the fact that PAA was the first in the state? So I hate to put that in the video, but what
you
can
know,
say it and I can double check it, kind of thing. You know.
I think it was, but you know, I'm just
I
not.
mean, maybe if it was more like a statement like, when PAA was, when PAA started, it was one of the first of its kind. It was a new idea and an idea, something along those lines. Is that?
Well, when PAA was envisioned, it was essentially, the idea was to consolidate these services, and yeah, it was certainly, if not the first in Virginia, was one of the first, and was also one of the first in the country. There weren't too many agencies on aging at the time. It was a fairly new concept.
I mean, you said that a couple of different ways. I think I got something I can use. I just kind of like that, in the beginning.
Well,
You just want to just say it was one of the first. One of the first, because then that gives you a buffer.
Yeah,
down
exactly.
in case it
Okay.
wasn't the first.
well,
That's true.
I think that it's clear the Peninsula Agency on Aging was one of the first agencies of its type in the country.